Pretty awesome stuff when you think about the basketball that Duke played on Friday night inside Cameron Indoor Stadium. This team was shooting the rock from the outside.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man. The Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson. It's so great to have you here with us today on this Tuesday, October 7th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics. On today's show, we're going to talk about countdown the craziness takeaways, and then we'll also recap the Duke football win over California as the Blue Devils now head into their bye week and get set for a massive game against Georgia Tech coming out of their bye week on October 18th. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Also, make sure that you watch us each and every day on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video. Share it with your friends as we continue to grow our everyday audience here within the world of Locked On Blue Devils. Spread the word. I appreciate everybody being a part of our inner circle here today. I want to talk countdown to craziness. I want to talk about this outside shooting performance that we saw on Friday night as both teams combined to go 12 of 23 from three-point range in countdown to craziness. And riding shotgun for us today on the show is our guy Hugh Straine from Ball Durham, back with us once again. How are you, Hugh? How are things going in your world?
Doing great. Stoked to be back. Thank you for having me on, JJ. Excited to talk some more Duke hoops and some Duke football. It's been a good week all around for sure.
And absolutely. Now we have actual content to talk about a little bit in the basketball realm, right? And I do want to start with the outside shooting that we saw. It's crazy. And look, we're going to overreact here. I understand it's a 12-minute scrimmage. I understand it's, Duke versus Duke. It's blue versus white. We're going to overreact to UCF and Tennessee in the first game of the season. I mean, that's what we get to do in a space like this. I'm glad you're getting to do it with me. But you think about all the great shooting that Duke had on their squad last year. I was a little surprised, pleasantly surprised, that we go and look and we see a 12 of 23 combined performance from the outside for both of these teams on Friday. What say you?
Yeah, I think, Duke came into this year expecting to be in contention for the best three-point shooting team in the country. And obviously you want to take things with a grain of salt, but you just saw it on display, not only with a few guys who can make shots, but there's just so much depth. Isaiah Evans, you see him willingly take the shot. If you give him any space, that ball is going up. There was a possession in transition where he had a clear lane to the basket. He decided
he had a 4-on-1.
Yeah, and then shot from there. He's going to be the best shooter on this team. He's one of the most confident shooters I've seen in the college game with how young he is. But I think just the depth and the amount of shooters that this team has is just incredible. And I think it's going to put him in contention to be the most dangerous outside shooting team in the country and one of the most prolific offenses all around. Love what I saw depth-wise, especially Darren Harris. I thought he really stepped up. There was a ton of action run for him, I thought, in the scrimmage, which, again, you want to take with a grain of salt because no one really knows the minutes he's truly going to play. But tons of action off screen for him in catch-and-shoot situations, and he just looked really comfortable. He looked much improved, and I'm excited for what he can do.
Feels like it's going to be wise for them to run those actions for DH, right? Like that's an outside shooter. Do whatever you can to get him the ball in a good spot. And we saw pin downs. We saw elevator screens. We're going to be able to see a lot of those looks for Darren Harris from the outside.
Yeah, I think he has the potential to be kind of an X factor off the bench for this Duke team. We talked about it last time, JJ. I think he's going to step into the pretty much exact role that Isaiah Evans played a season ago. We talked about Isaiah Evans' volume from three-point range, just on the amount of shots he took. I think it's going to be the exact same situation for Darren Harris, and I think he has the confidence and the ability to fill that role. Again, with so many shooters everywhere, he just adds another dimension to what the offense can do as a whole with him on the floor. So super excited to see him during his sophomore season in an extended role, much more than obviously he played as a freshman, but super excited about his game, his stroke, super quick stroke, and I'm just excited to see him play.
Yeah, he caught it high, he shot it high, and it paid off, particularly on that look he had in the corner. I love the first set of the game. He's got a pull-up dribble from the free throw line right at the elbow. Not necessarily shooting everything from the outside. We got to see kind of an expanded arsenal there from Darren Harris. Three-point shooting, we talked Isaiah Evans. He's able to knock down 3 of them for Duke. Pat Ngongba he gets one to go from the outside. I want to get to his interior moves in just a second. Strictly three-point shot. Man, that shot looked good, man. We saw it in a couple of clips, but totally different when everybody's in the gym watching you and you're able to shoot it as confidently and comfortably as Ngongba did.
Yeah, he took 1-3 all of last season and he missed it. If you were to ask me at any point, do I think Pat Ngongba is going to take 10 threes this year? Absolutely not. There's no reason for it. But based off that shot, again, it looked comfortable. He came out on the perimeter. We actually saw him on the perimeter a good amount throughout that game on both sides of the ball. I think his footwork is much improved. But, I mean, who knows how much we can really expect him to shoot just because they're not going to need him to shoot. But he looked great on the interior, and I'm just excited to see his confidence and see him fully healthy. That's the biggest thing, is he looked healthy.
Yeah, Cam Boozer got one to go from the outside. Nick Kamenya was able to knock down a three-point look. We already mentioned Darren Harris, the three that you got from Isaiah Evans. I'm leaving a guy out, and that's Sebastian Wilkins. What about what Duke got out of Sebastian Wilkins from a shooting perspective? He hits one of the first shots of the game in the corner to knock it down, and then they had the Elam ending set up with the target score in place, and Wilkins knocks down the final shot of the game.
Yeah, he just looked comfortable in those corners, putting himself in a position to be available. Looked like a confident shooter. His minutes will probably fluctuate quite a bit just with the amount of depth and how late of an ad he was. He was actually a member of the 2026 class, moved up to 2025. Who knows, what his minutes is going to be. But if he's just another shooter at around 6'4", 6'5", that Jon Scheyer can add, great. We don't need. There's very few flaws, I think, with this Duke team, and you can never have too many shooters, especially when injuries start to become a question. So I thought he looked comfortable. He has a nice stroke in that corner, and I think he can sit there, be a decoy at times in the game. But again, excited about his game. We haven't heard too much about him throughout the preseason, just because he was one of the later ads and was a reclass from 2026 to 25. But thought he looked comfortable and smooth. Again, handled with the basketball, looked good, and obviously loved his outside jump shot.
He's such an athlete, and I think that's kind of what we're expecting, not necessarily the shooting. For him offensively. I just think about him playing above the rim. I go back to the scrimmage footage that we saw from Duke earlier this summer. I talked about one of the breakaway dunks that he's got in the gym where you saw Cassius Stanley sitting there courtside, and how fitting that was that one of my all-time favorite leapers in basketball for Duke was Cassius Stanley watching Sebastian Wilkins. Here we are getting a chance to see him shoot from the outside. So just all in all, Hugh, give me one more thought on the outside shooting for Duke and how big of a weapon this could be for the squad in 2025, 2026.
I just think it's so versatile when you have so many guys that can shoot in so many different ways. You have guys like Isaiah Evans who can shoot off the catch, off the dribble. We saw him create his own shot more than we saw last year. And you can run so much action to get so many catch and shoot situations and force the defense up. So when you have guys like Pat Ngongba, Cam Boozer, even Nick Kamenya and Dame Sarr at times down low, it frees up that space so much more. And with Cam Boozer, I know we saw him a lot on the perimeter, but I assume he's going to play much more down low regularly once the season starts. When you force the defense up that much, it just frees up the interior so much more. So Duke can dominate on really all thirds of the floor because Cameron Boozer is so versatile. But if you put him down low and Pat Ngongba as well, they're just so dominant. So they're going to force defenses up, and the defenses sag off great. They'll take 25 threes. They'll take 30 threes. It doesn't matter. Duke can beat you in so many ways. That's what having a plethora of outside shooters awards you as a coach.
I'm already thinking about kind of the backdoor looks even that Duke's going to be able to have. If you play up, I'm thinking about just baseline lobs that you could get and highlight plays that you're able to create in that fashion. Also, just Jon Scheyer is an analytical basketball mind, and that's kind of what you got hiring a younger guy. I've heard him talk about a good bit, always wanting to prioritize the three-point shot, free throws, and defense, right? And this feels like the perfect mix.
Yeah, I mean, you were seeing it with all these young coaches, me included, as kind of trying to be a member of the media. I'm 21 years old and I'm super into analytics. It seems like that's just kind of the new wave. And I mean, yeah, in theory, it makes perfect sense. A three is worth 50% more than a two. Make it the most efficient shot you have. How are teams going to beat you? It essentially just takes away the mid-range with how this makeup works as a team. You either take the shot that's worth 50% more, or the ball is going to get down low into the paint where it's the most consistent shot in basketball. Then obviously as a team, if you're going to be a great team, you have to make your free throws. There's just no way around that. But when you have so much versatility offensively, it's kind of like a Nate Oates system in a way where he takes away the mid-range. And in theory, it makes perfect sense because it's the least consistent shot in basketball. You take threes, which are worth more, or you get shots at the basket. It seems like that's what Jon Scheyer is working towards with his guys. And this makeup of this team from an offensive standpoint just looks like it can be so dominant.
If I'm not mistaken, Nate Oates in Alabama set the NCAA tournament record, right, for three-point shots made. And then they played Duke in the Elite Eight. And what happened?
They were shut down. It was
Duke won. Duke won.
Well, when you have Duke, last season, Duke was by far the best defensive team in the country. That's what also makes Scheyer maybe the best coach in the country, is how he makes up his defensive team with length, athleticism, and versatility. So it's just impossible to – I mean, when you have 7'1" Common Malawach, you can switch on to Mark Sears, who was one of the best offensive players in college basketball. There just aren't many teams that can do that. Duke had one of the more dominant rosters last year, and the size isn't quite what it was last year, mixed with the versatility. But again, it's made up for one of the best teams in the country, and I'm super excited to start this season.
You said Nate Oates, and I just had to remind the world out there what happened in the Elite Eight. Fun memories there for Duke basketball. All right, Cam Boozer, though, he's going to be creating a lot of big-time memories for the Blue Devils this upcoming season, as are a couple of these other impressive freshmen. We've got more Countdown to Craziness thoughts when we continue in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. When you're looking for tickets, Game Time is the place to go. As college football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel more like a battle than the game itself. Endless waiting queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. Those aren't fun. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. The easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, and in just a couple of taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about the best college football games as low as $25. Doesn't get better than that. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Our show today is also brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley's rushing touchdowns. You are in the game. I just love how easy it is to make a lineup in under a minute. You can add stacks. So if you want to ride with the player, I could select their passing yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. The features are amazing. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. A proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, Hugh Straine is here with me today. We're talking Countdown to Craziness, Duke basketball, blue versus white. Player introductions. Jason Tatum was there. A big announcement in regards to Jon Scheyer introducing him, saying he's going to be a part of the squad. No one really knows what in the world that means to you. This guy is still being paid a ton of money to play for the Boston Celtics while being injured this year. But what an amazing recruiting pitch that was, as Duke had top recruits Jordan Smith Jr. and Cam Williams sitting there courtside. What about the Jason Tatum and the introduction piece of Countdown stood out to you?
Yeah, I just thought it was a super cool moment because Jason Tatum's one of the most beloved Blue Devils ever. He might be my favorite Blue Devil ever. And yeah, I think in terms of Jordan Smith and Cameron Williams, the two 5-stars Duke had on campus, having a star like that and bringing that to the atmosphere, into an atmosphere that's already impossible to recreate as another school, just adds to why these recruits, why do you want to go to Duke? The class of 2026 is very interesting because it's generally viewed as a down year compared to a lot of recruiting classes over the last 10 years. So Jon Scheyer has been going after a couple recruits that I think he thinks can develop as opposed to contribute on a championship caliber team right away. But I know Jordan Smith has been heavily recruited by Duke, went to Paul VI Catholic. We talked about it last time, Darren Harris, Pat Ngongba as well. And Cameron Williams is, again, more of a project type of guy, but a guy like Jon Scheyer can develop any talent in the country, and he seems to believe in him. But yeah, I think just adding to that atmosphere, that is maybe the coolest preseason atmosphere in all of college basketball, and one that is impossible to recreate anyway. I mean, what better recruiting pitch to 2 5-star recruits than that?
Yeah, those are still some of the best players in the entire country. So you're right, though. The class might not have the big NBA buzz that the top does. When you look at Cooper Flagg this past year, you look at Cam Boozer, AJ DeBonsa, Darren Peterson that you've currently got in this class. Next year, when Duke's going after the top guys, though, expect them to put together a really impressive class. I loved it. Cameron Boozer, though, the top guy this year, able to knock down a shot from the outside and count down, came up with like a steal and took a fast break coast to coast with kind of a Euro step finish at the rim. He showed off a little bit of everything in this game, man, and that was really fun to watch.
Yeah, he's just such a complete basketball player. He spent the majority of his time on the court along the perimeter, handling the ball, sort of initiating the offense, which I can't imagine happens all that much this season. I assume there will be plenty of action run for him up top, initiating the offense. I just can't imagine he's regularly doing it because he was starting every possession at the perimeter and staying there for a lot of the time. But yeah, he can do practically everything offensively at 6'11", and he's just an extreme athlete. He can post you up down low. He's got a mid-range game. He can create an outside shot. He's got great vision. He can pass. He can do virtually everything offensively. I think there's a real possibility. This isn't necessarily a hot take, but it's a real possibility. He's a first-team All-American. He looks like potentially the most talented player in the entire country. He dropped to the number 4 overall recruit in the last 24/7 Sports composite rankings, which is kind of crazy in my opinion, because I think he's the most complete player in the entire class. But super excited to see what he can do offensively. I think 20 points and 10 rebounds is certainly on the table for him per game averages.
No, for sure. I think he was able to show his complete game, and defensively, I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do for Duke. And again, a guy that they're going to feature a whole lot. I'm with you. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this is a first-team All-American type player for the Blue Devils. The hype is real. His brother was playing on the same team with him. They were both on the white team for Duke this in Countdown. Carlos Boozer, their dad, was sitting baseline. Super fun for him to be able to watch his guys suit up for Duke here. And then the other guy that was on the white team from this heralded freshman class for the Blue Devils was Dame Sarr, who finished with 2 points, had a pair of steals, and then had the most rebounds on his team with 3. A quiet night, though, for Dame Sarr, who did have a couple of shots blocked at the rim. I think a lot of people were underwhelmed, to say the least, with what they saw out of Dame Sarr from this first game. Again, this is where the overreactions might come in a little bit. But from what we saw, I don't think Dame Sarr is the guy that stole many headlines.
No, I don't think he did at all. I think he was certainly very sped up with the college game, which I found pretty interesting with his already pro experience.
Yeah, interesting. I like that.
He was sped up. I think physically he was getting tossed around a little bit. We talked about his body last time and just his frame. He certainly is a skinny guy, but I think the physicality definitely got to him. But I liked his willingness to be physical. He attacked the lane and he wanted contact. He just doesn't quite have the body to compete with Duke's bigs yet, which is okay, I think, but certainly think he was sped up. I think he's got to learn the rhythm of the college game as well. We talked last time, and I thought for sure Dame would be the starter at the 3. I'm not so sure that's the case after seeing them in live action because Nick Hamenia looks much more comfortable with the speed of the college game at this point.
Indeed. Yeah, Nick does look great. Knocked down a couple of shots there from the outside. I think it's going to be competitive. And maybe it's one of those years where Duke's got 6 starters, right? You can only put 5 of them out there, but you feel so good about Hamenia and Sarr being interchangeable. Again, worth noting, Malik Brown held out of action at Countdown this past weekend. I got to keep reminding myself of that. I know he was introduced and that sort of thing, but you watch this team run, and that's a good feeling to be able to be like, oh, wait, yeah, Malik Brown, one of the best defenders in the entire country, is still on this basketball team. We just didn't get to see him yet.
Yeah, I'm just taking Jon Scheyer's word for it. He does not seem to be worried. I kind of let that knee scope go in one ear, out the other. Is very minor. I'm more worried about his shoulder because obviously he dislocated it twice last season. Scheyer said it's doing great. Looks like he's going to be ready for the regular season. I think he's got the potential to be the best all-around defender in college basketball this season. I'm just worried about his health. He doesn't need to play in the scrimmage. Just get him on the court healthy for game number 1 against Texas.
All right, let's talk about this Duke team as they get set for the upcoming season. Again, high expectations for the Blue Devils, but seeing countdown 2 weeks from today, we'll see that next exhibition match against UCF there in the Brotherhood Run. I like that, man, that they've got 2 full weeks now to get in their practice habits, build a little bit more of those chemistry things, get Malik Brown back to full health.
Yeah, you obviously love the Charity Brotherhood Run event, get to bring Johnny Dawkins back, who's a Duke alum. Super cool event altogether. And then, yeah, it just gives Scheyer the opportunity to see which rotations actually work in game action, which guys work together and run a bunch of sets, whatever he wants, and just figure out which action works the most consistently. Because obviously you're not going to know when you're only playing against each other. In practice, it's pretty hard. It's going to take tons of time for Duke to figure out what works and which lineups work against who, and who is more far along than potentially other guys. I think seeing a guy like Dame against high-level competition, see if he really is truly sped up by the college game in real game action, if he's really getting tossed around physically, and if he really does have places to go before his body is physically there. I think things like that, the intangibles, are going to tell a lot. I think it's just about experimenting for Scheyer, letting his guys get loose, have some fun, especially with so many freshmen, just get acclimated to the speed of the college game.
All right, big stuff from Duke basketball. Again, 2 weeks from today, we'll see them back in action when they take on UCF. When we come back here in just a moment, I got to talk about this Duke football team who earned their 3rd ACC win of the season late Saturday night against Cal. Really impressive showing from Manny Diaz and the Duke football unit. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood the neighborhood. They're the places that become an extension of home. Whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings in town for game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in the community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. When neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. They are the absolute best. Looking here in the Durham area, awesome to shout out places like Bean Traders, Parker and Otis, and 9th Street Bakery, Chubby's Tacos, and so much more. All proud partners with Square using the Square devices. It is an awesome thing. With more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world, you can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. Proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, here we go. We keep moving forward. It is JJ Jackson alongside Hugh Straine. He's the site expert for Ball Durham. And now we got to talk a little Duke football, who earned themselves a 45-21 victory over Cal. 10:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff this past Saturday night. It was certainly a late one. Certainly people were feeling some sort of way when it's 21-7, when you saw Trey Freeman go out with an injury and then his backup, Bradley Gompers, is ejected because of a targeting call. Felt like nothing was going in Duke's way. And then the defense woke up, the offense kept scoring, and holy cow, man, that was a really impressive performance for Duke once they got out of that first quarter.
Yeah, super late kickoff Eastern time, but certainly worth watching it. I mean, this was the first time all season we've seen Duke football get kicked in the teeth pretty hard early, 21-7 deficit in the second quarter. You mentioned with the injury and the ejection to the defensive guys, and respond in a completely dominant way. After that 21-7 deficit, Duke proceeded to score 38 unanswered points, take a 45-21 victory, just utter dominance from the midway of the second quarter on. And you mentioned the defensive injuries and the lack of depth. Freshman Elliott Shaper came out of nowhere, a freshman linebacker, and completely took the game by storm, led the team in tackles with 12. He played a little bit against Syracuse last week with the injuries, but now he's probably going to see a lot of time. He had 2 sacks and an interception in more or less his debut, not essentially his debut. But I was super impressed with the offense as a whole. Darian Mensah was pumped up. This is the most fluid I think the offense has looked all season, and we're just really, really excited to see the team get kicked in the teeth early and respond in a really big way.
Big time response for Duke there offensively to be able to keep scoring, and then their defense to come up with takeaways and sacks. The Cal quarterback JKS. I'm not going to even try to pronounce his name, but he was in a zone early, and he's been impressive throughout the course of the year. But finally, you saw VJ Anthony and Wesley Williams in that front starting to get after him, and then the back end comes away 4 interceptions for the Duke secondary. And you talked about it with us last week, Hugh, when you were on, when you're talking about, hey, the first 3 games of the season, Duke only had 1 takeaway as a defensive unit. Now their last 3, they've got 11, man. That is a massive increase.
Yeah, we're seeing the script completely flip on both sides of the football. I think defensively and offensively, this team just looks like it has a revamped energy. JKS, he's a true freshman, but has been extremely impressive throughout the course of his early career with Cal. It was certainly exciting for Duke, and a game Duke absolutely needed to move to 3-0 in the ACC, one of 2 ACC squads to get out to a 3-0 start along with Virginia. And Duke now hits the bye, and then after the bye, they have a 4-game stretch with 3 of them being vastly important games. You mentioned, JJ, hosting number 13 Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech might be the second best team in the ACC. Absolutely crucial game. Then Duke will go to Clemson. Then they'll go to UConn. Then they host Virginia. So a massive 4-game stretch that practically decides the entire ceiling this season can be right after a bye week. So a lot to get organized with, a lot to figure out for Manny Diaz.
Yeah, you talk about Georgia Tech. They'll play Virginia Tech this weekend. They're favored by 2 touchdowns right now, so a lot of people expect the Yellow Jackets to win that one. Duke's got the advantage there in just the preparation when it comes to this. Maybe they'll be able to get some good news on the injury front from a lot of people. But offensively, again, we talked about Darian Mensah, whose passing yards, funny enough, have gone down every single game this season, and yet Duke continues to win. They're working shorter fields because of all the takeaways. And then most importantly, Duke's finding a rushing attack from Nate Shepard, from Anderson Castle. And I loved seeing Jaquez Moore get back in the mix and put together some nice runs. You could tell he was really fired up about that too.
Yeah, Nate Shepard really coming out of nowhere to be one of the biggest breakout pieces really across the entire ACC.
Indeed.
He's completely taken over this Duke backfield as the starter. He's got almost 500 rushing yards. Right now, he ranks 3rd in the conference in rushing yards while ranking outside of the top 10 in attempts. He's averaging 8 yards a carry, which is good for the best in the entire ACC. His big play ability
That's
is
silly, Hugh. That is silly.
He's got at least 1 run of 35 yards or more in 3 games this season, and in 2 of them, he hardly saw any carries. He's been so impressive. He brings such an explosive attack to Duke and has become one of Duke's most explosive offensive threats. He can catch the football. He's got over 100 receiving yards. Super excited about what he's been doing. And I think when you add in guys like Anderson Castle, who's a good receiving back, and Jaquez Moore, who's been up and down, but in his action, he's been fairly solid. Duke's biggest weakness last season was the lack of a rushing attack. Now they have a rushing attack, and the season has completely turned around offensively. I think it's extremely exciting for Duke fans to see what's going on. And again, realistically, Duke has played fairly middle of the pack teams in the ACC through this 3-game win streak, especially Syracuse losing quarterback Steve Angeli to a torn Achilles. But this home game against Georgia Tech is going to pay huge dividends for the remainder of the season. I think it's one Duke absolutely needs to win if they're going to have a chance to win the ACC and potentially get in the college football playoff. Not many people are talking about that. That's still a very real possibility.
Without a doubt. I mean, if Duke's playing in the ACC title game, they've earned the right to have an opportunity to get into that college football playoff. It's the bye week for the Blue Devils. It's 2 weeks until we see basketball back in action against UCF. And yet, I go to Ball Durham right now, Hugh, and I see no shortage of things for people to check out. Tell us about all your work and how people can best support you.
Yeah, check out balldurham.com, BALLDURHAM. New content every single day. Super fun, giving you everything you need from news to recruiting to game action to updates to betting to any stories. Check us out. New content every single day. I appreciate the shout out, JJ. Give us a look.
All right, man. We'll do this again sometime soon, okay?
All right. Sounds good. Good talking to you, JJ.
That's Hugh Straine joining us here on today's episode of Locked on Blue Devils. And that's going to bring our show today to a close. Appreciate everybody for your support. If you are a part of our everyday community, please be sure to let us know in the comments down below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcasts. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.